We are approaching 24 hours since the start of Trump's blockade of Iranian ports, and that's the correct way to frame this, as Trump is conducting not a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, just a blockade of anybody doing business with Iran. And so there's going to be great scrutiny on the vessels that pass through the strait and are successful in transiting the strait and where they are going to conduct business. But the media is not going to frame it that way. They're going to make put article titles like "Tankers Pass Strait of Hormuz on First Day of U.S. Blockade, Data Shows." And then if nobody reads the article, they think, oh, well, the blockade's a failure. When in reality, this report talks about 3 vessels. Yes, a couple of them are sanctioned vessels, but they all go dock at other ports in other countries, and all 3 of them, I think all 3 don't even ship any kind of oil or gas. And so right now the blockade is working, and of course, as time goes on, there's going to be adjustments to the blockade. I would not be surprised if some vessels are allowed to conduct business. In the past, Trump has allowed this to occur in other situations. And so, yes, I'm sure that'll happen, and I'm sure a lot of people will jump all over that as pointing to a failure. But, when you look at this holistically and strategically, this is currently working. And again, it's less than 24 hours, folks. There's a lot of things that are going to happen and that will change the calculus as we move forward. Now, you're also going to see social media reports that China is escorting ships. That is not true, at least not at the moment. And all they are doing is condemning the actions. Again, China has done very little to support Iran in any of this. There are also reports that demining vessels are coming from the Pacific to support this operation. People wonder why that didn't happen sooner. There are different parts of this strategy that are unfolding. And part of the strategy, I believe, is that Trump is showing the world, showing these European countries that are supposedly having this capability and incapable of support. He is showing how incapable and untrustworthy they truly are as it relates to being an alliance member, as somebody that has a long-standing relationship with the United States, and also showing that they are not ready for the moment. When you look at Great Britain's fleet, it is basically been mothballed. They have no operational capability to support any kind of defense or offense or counteroffense, any kind of military support whatsoever. That's how bad their naval fleet is at the moment. And I know we talk all about the Strait of Hormuz, but there's 2 other straits worth talking about, and the one is the south of the Red Sea that the Houthis control. I can't remember how to pronounce it. But anyways, there were reports early on that they are going to close it, or they closed it. None of that is true. What happened was an armed skiff came to try and flag down a passing vessel, and they failed. The flare was fired at them, and they deviated away. There's also a lot of piracy that goes on in that region, and so that's more indicative of piracy. And yet people went ahead and jumped the gun and said, oh, they're closing the strait. They're not doing anything. The Houthis haven't really done anything. They fired like 2 missiles over this entire 45-day period. And then the other strait to talk about, worth mentioning, is the Strait of Malacca, which is over by Singapore. And if Singapore were to take the same actions as the IRGC, they would control more of the world's oil and goods, because that strait is only 2 miles wide. And this strait up here, it's 22 miles or 21 miles wide. And so for that reason, and because Singapore is a civilized society, not hell-bent on destroying another country, and because they're kind of really small, but more because they're enlightened and diplomatic, they are choosing to side with international law of the sea, and they encourage all of their partners to do the same and not support the IRGC. And one last thing worth mentioning is that there are upwards of 70 super tankers that are empty, that are heading towards the Gulf Coast of America. It is unclear as to whether they are all going to be taking orders from the United States, but it is expected that they are coming to buy our oil. So our exports are set to explode in the next couple weeks.